Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Git Good at OpenRCT2. In this episode I will show you how to build a custom Ferris wheel. Now there are several ways to do it, but first I will show you a method that I like to use. For this ride I typically use the river rafts. The reason for this is that these vehicles don't have sprites for sloped track pieces. So they will always stay upright, and that's probably the best way to build a custom Ferris wheel. I've also seen people use monorail cars, not the streamlined ones, but the other ones. But I do think they look a little bit strange on the sloped sections of the wheel. Because normally in a Ferris wheel you don't you stay straight up. Let's put it like that. I've also tried it with the chairlift cars once, but the way I built the track, they flip around halfway during the circle, and it looks kind of strange. Maybe I'll show what I mean later. Anyway, first off, I will simply start by building a track, and from there we will continue. For now, I will simply use the twister coaster, just because it's easy to build with that. Now, to start off, we'll make a station. I always like to make my Ferris wheel start a bit off the ground. It gives you some starting height to begin with. You can make a nice hill for the station to start on, or a nice building, a nice platform. It just makes your Ferris wheel look a little bit more impressive. Anyway, let's start with a straight piece of track here. Actually, we'll probably want some chain lift on our tracks here. So we go to cheats and allow chain lifts on all track pieces. Now the point here is to build a sort of circular track. Alright, I built two vertical pieces upwards now. What I'll do now is I'll rotate the track twice, and I'll make a straight piece here. And now I deleted those rotated pieces, and now we will start building again from here. We'll need to disable clearance checks. Now these two pieces overlap here. So what we have here is now a vertical track, and here the track continues, but from the other side. So I can simply continue building like this now. Now, actually, I think I'll want to extend these slope pieces a bit, so let's do that. Remember to not put a chain lift on your station. You'll probably want to avoid that. Now, in the downward section, chain lifts are no longer required. Now again here I built two vertical pieces, then I rotate the track and make a vertical piece here, then I delete the rotated pieces, and from this vertical piece here I start building upwards again. Okay, they overlap here now. Alright, that's our track done. So we can build an entrance and an exit. You can make a nice platform here however you like. You can probably look in some of the previous entries from the ride creation contest to look for some of the ferris wheels. Several people made versions of these. I also made one in my mega park that you can check out. I'll link it in the description of this video, so you can also take a look at how I built it there. Now, we have twisted trains now. That's not what we want. We'll want the river rafts. So I'll allow the show vehicles from other track types cheat. Actually, let me make the screen a little bit bigger so it's easier to follow. So I allow the show vehicles from other track types cheat, and we enable the rafts. Now you can see we get one raft now. That's not what we want, so we'll disable vehicle limits, and that should give us the option to put more cars. Now I built this before, and I believe we could have 49 cars on this track. Now if we try to spawn it now, of course we first need to change it to a mode that allows a non-continuous circuit. So we'll have to use the show all operating modes cheat. And let's use powered launch, that will work. Or we could use both higher modes. Let's use that one. Now I will unlock operating limits, so we can make the chain lift speed a little bit lower. We don't want it to go through here too fast. Now the first thing I actually should do before we continue with this is check if the merge went successfully. So I open the tile inspector and I select this track piece. The train goes forward here and we want it to go to the top track, so to this track piece. The track piece you want to go to should always be the lower one in the list. So here we have two track pieces at height 48. So I've selected one of them now. So let's move it up. So it looks like we have selected the top piece now. We want it to go to the top piece, so that one should be lower in the list. Right now it's the higher one in the list. So with this button we move it one lower. So just to check, so this is the track piece we have selected now, it's the lower one in the list. If we move it up or down a little bit, we can see it's the top piece, so that's good. On the other side we have to do the opposite. So we want it to go to the lower track here, so we have to select the lower track piece. If you hold Control in Tile Inspector and then click it, you immediately select the piece. So as you can see, the lower track piece, if you hear some bangs in the background, that's from fireworks. Right now the piece we have selected is this lower piece, but it's the higher one in the list, so we move it one down. So the lower track piece in the list, that's the one it will go to on this merge. So right now the merges should be done successfully. Now if we try to spawn this 49 car train here, you'll see something weird happens. All the cars end up bunched together, and that's not something we want. So actually there are 49 cars in this train, just the last 30 or so are all bunched up in this last car. So in order to allow them to spawn, what I will do is just extend the track here. If the merge is done successfully, they won't end up on this track. So I will just use rotated track pieces for this, just because they're longer track pieces, so it's less work to make them invisible. Now, I'll disable the support limits, and I'll make a really high track. Now let's see if we can spawn the train. Okay, it looks like we can fully spawn it. Now for this first lap it will be a bit fast, but in the laps after that it will be slower. Alright, and this is the speed at which it will now do its laps. Right, now we'll have to make these track pieces here invisible. So for that I will simply use corrupt elements. So we just have to select all these track pieces and make them invisible. Alright, you can also recolor these vehicles, but this train has a bit of a weird color palette. This brown color that you see here is actually really dark, so if we make it white they actually turn gray. So yeah, the colors you choose here will always be a bit darker. The colors you choose will be up to you, really. Let's see if we can make it a tiny bit slower. This is probably a bit better. But yeah, you can tweak the speed if you want to. Alright. By the way, you can also there are actually more methods to get these trains on this track. You could also use shoestringing, so you could make a control track and then lead the front car or several cars onto a different track to control when it stops and when it rides. This is simply the easier method. And also, when I shoestringed this ride before, for some reason the stats in the park no longer calculated. So there's also that. So yeah, there are more ways than one to do this, but this is by far the easiest method to get these cars running on this wheel. Now with shoestringing, you can actually make these cars stop on any part of the track. They don't have to do a full rotation, and with the method I used now, yeah, the cars will do one full rotation and then stop, and then everybody gets in or out. Now, I will just make the track invisible now. So for that, I will allow arbitrary ride type changes, and I'll change it to a lift. This also means that if we do this, this also means that guests who encounter this ride, they will ride it regardless of its stats. So yeah, if it's in a location where there's a lot of guests, then a lot of everybody who enters it will also ride it. Okay. Now the reason these rafts are good for this ride is that at the place of the merge, the cars will actually flip around. So if I use a different ride type, let's use the chairlift cars. Probably the speed of these cars is done a little bit differently, not with the chainlift, but it might be a bit difficult to follow, so I'll pause it and I'll just make them a bit brighter colored so you can see what goes on. So these two colors should have a good contrast. So here the gas would be sitting in the front, and then right here the cars would flip around again. It's probably not what you want. It looks quite jarring, and the river rafts, right? They actually look symmetrical from both sides, so it's not really noticeable when the cars flip around. Alright, when you've done this, then you could make some spokes in the middle or not. You could also go for a spokeless wheel. What I like to do for spokes is typically for the vertical section I will use the limb coaster track. Like so. So I will only use this track for the vertical section, and then I will take the junior coaster track. Now I'll have to look it up at what height the middle of the track is, around 25.5 meters. So let's go at 25.5 meters. Now the spokes don't actually rotate with the wheel, so yeah, it's your choice if you want to have the spokes or not. It means that the people who watch this will have to use their imagination for well, they will just have to use their imagination to picture the spokes moving or not. Now, to get the steep sections for the junior coaster, I believe you can do that with enable all drawable track pieces. Now, there might be some clipping with the ride vehicles at some point. Yeah, here at the bottom it doesn't really look right, so I will just stop here. It might be worth playing with the height of the wheel at some point, but yeah, that's really up to you. I will now just finish these spokes in these places. Now, when you've made this, you should probably make a center hub which the spokes connect to in order to keep it upright. So I like to use the dinghy slides for that. And then you should probably make some supports. It's also up to you how you make them. You can really go wild here with the design. A ride type I like to use is the inverted impulse coaster. We probably want it to be a bit lower. But yeah, like I said, you can go wild here. You would simply have to repeat this pattern on the other side. You could also make them diagonal if you want. maybe that will look even nicer. But I have to say that I tried it once and it's quite tricky to do. Of course, you would need to have to recolor them. I didn't recolor any of the rides here, so it now looks a bit like a big mess of colors. And one thing we should definitely do is remove these supports. The easiest way to do it is just to move them under the surface. Alright, I will quickly give them a nice color. Alright, and that's a quick and easy way to make a Ferris wheel. Now you could also choose to do a spokeless Ferris wheel, and if you want to do that, you should remove the center section, and you'll probably want to make some fake track, along the inside of the track here. Let's see if we can do that in a nice way. Probably inverted impulse coaster will work well for this. Oh, looks like I messed up a bit with the perspective. Let's try that again. I already found it weird that I couldn't line it up properly. You'll probably want this to be a little bit tighter than the original track you made. Actually, let me make the junior coaster track invisible. And the same for the limb coaster track. And we also won't need the thingy slide track anymore. And we won't need these supports either. Now here we don't actually have to do a merge, but we can do it just like we did on the original track. Now it will look slightly strange here, I admit that. So yeah, you'll just have to find something that works well for you. Oh, looks like I accidentally merged the tracks. This is probably the better way to do it. If I remove this track piece now, the ride will probably crash, because I accidentally merged them here. Alright, now it will look slightly strange from different angles, but I think this is one way you can make a spokeless wheel. You would have to find some way to make it look a little bit more circular, but probably with different track types. You can probably achieve it in a better way than what I just did here. Now, and then here at the bottom, you would need to make some supports, or maybe here at the side as well. And the good thing about making a spokeless wheel like this is that it's also easy to run a coaster through it. Just like the one in, I believe it's in Tokyo. Alright, then there's another way to make a custom Ferris wheel, another way that I sometimes like to use. It's a bit of more of a futuristic thing, not something that actually exists, and it's a lot easier and faster to do, but also a lot less spectacular. So for that you simply start with a station, You could make it a bit higher, probably a better idea. Make sure there's a chain lift on the track. Also, when you go vertical, make sure the chain lift stays ticked. And then we make a quarter loop. We do a straight piece. Then do another quarter loop. And there we go. Now this is a lot easier to make. We need one train. I don't remember how many cars fit on here. This is well, this might. I think this is actually immediately the right amount. Okay, we set the lift chain, the chain speed to a very low number. 1 km/h should be might be enough. Just give it some fancy colors. Just make some supports next to it. So for support, you could do something like I don't know. Something like this, and then it would sit on a platform, and it would look like it's supported here from the sides. And again, here you can also just run a coaster through it. Now, one thing you'll want to make sure when making one of these is that you actually rotate the seats, because right now here on top guests will be upside down, and that's probably not a very comfortable position to ride a Ferris wheel. So yeah, while building, you can actually set the rotation. So for example, here we'll probably want it to be 180 degrees, something like that. Here we will do 90 degrees for 45. I'm not sure if I'm doing this in the right direction, but oops, clear from 180. Let's give it a quick test. Oh, it looks like I actually made it worse on the downward side. Oh well, it's up to you to play with this. But yeah, this is a much simpler way to make a custom Ferris wheel. Also something you won't see in real life. This would probably fit in a more futuristic park, because the guests will be sitting next to the track rather than sitting in cabins. But yeah, this is also a way to sort of make a Ferris wheel. Now, Ferris wheels actually come in many different shapes as well. Well, yeah, most of them are actually circles, but there's a few of them in the world that have different shapes. For example, there's one in Japan that looks more like this. Well, yeah, so there's actually a rail which the cars just travel along, and yeah, you would just need to give it several more trains. And I believe in China, in Macau, there's actually a casino with sort of a figure-8 Ferris wheel on the inside of a building facade. So yeah, you could also play with other shapes of Ferris wheels if that is what you like, and if you want to make a Ferris wheel that is unique. Alright, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's useful for you, and I'll see you again in the next episode. And now for the final bit of my video, I will just show the Ferris wheel that I made in my mega park. See you later.